A woman gave birth to 10 children. Her husband's reaction will leave you speechless. Amelia had always wanted a large family. Growing up as an only child in a quiet suburb of Minneapolis, Minnesota, she'd often dreamed of a bustling household filled with the laughter and chaos of siblings. She'd imagined Christmases overflowing with presents, Thanksgivings with a table groaning under the weight of food and family, and summer evenings filled with the sounds of children playing in the backyard. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Her first marriage, a youthful whirlwind romance, had ended in a painful divorce after just 3 years. She'd thrown herself into her career, working as a graphic designer for a small advertising agency, finding solace in her work and the company of her close-knit group of friends. She'd met David, her second husband, in her late 20s. He was a kind, gentle man, a software engineer with a quiet sense of humor and a deep love for the outdoors. They'd married after a year of dating, both eager to start a family. But the years passed, and the children didn't come. They tried everything: fertility treatments, adoption agencies, even exploring surrogacy options. Each attempt ended in disappointment, each negative pregnancy test a fresh wave of grief. Amelia, now 35, felt the weight of her unfulfilled dream pressing down on her. She watched her friends have children, celebrating their pregnancies, their births, their milestones. She attended baby showers, forced smiles on her face while her heart ached with longing. She loved David deeply, but the strain of their infertility struggles was beginning to take its toll on their marriage. They argued more frequently, their conversations often circling back to the painful topic of children, or the lack thereof. She began to withdraw, spending more time alone, lost in her thoughts and her sadness. She felt like a failure, like her body had betrayed her. She questioned her purpose, her identity, her worth as a woman. One evening, after another failed fertility treatment, Amelia sat alone in her living room, tears streaming down her face. She felt a profound sense of emptiness, a yearning that seemed to consume her entire being. She knew that she couldn't give up, that she had to keep searching for a way to fulfill her dream of becoming a mother. This is the important part. It set the background of the main character. This first part introduces Amelia, the protagonist, and establishes her deep desire for a large family. It highlights her past struggles with infertility and the emotional toll it has taken on her and her marriage. The setting is established, and the stage is set for the introduction of the extraordinary medical opportunity that will change her life forever. The focus is on the human element, on Amelia's emotional state and her yearning for motherhood, making her a relatable and sympathetic character for the elderly readers. Amelia's search for alternative solutions led her to a specialized fertility clinic on the outskirts of the city, a sleek, modern building that housed some of the most advanced reproductive technology in the country. It was a place of last resort, a place where hope mingled with desperation. She'd read about Dr. Evelyn Reed, the clinic's director, and a medical journal. Dr. Reed was a pioneer in the field of reproductive endocrinology, known for her groundbreaking research and her willingness to push the boundaries of conventional fertility treatments. She was a controversial figure, praised by some for her innovative approaches and criticized by others for her perceived recklessness. Amelia had an initial consultation with Dr. Reed, a tall, imposing woman with a sharp intellect and a no-nonsense demeanor. Dr. Reed listened patiently to Amelia's story, reviewing her medical history and asking detailed questions about her previous fertility treatments. "Mrs. Miller," Dr. Reed said, her voice calm and measured, "your case is challenging, but not hopeless. You've exhausted the conventional options, but there are other possibilities." She explained that she was currently conducting clinical trials for a new, experimental fertility treatment that involved a novel approach to ovarian stimulation and embryo implantation. The treatment, she explained, significantly increased the chances of conception, but it also carried a higher risk of multiple births. "We're seeing a higher incidence of twins, triplets, even quadruplets," Dr. Reed said. "But we've also had a few cases, well, let's just say they were unprecedented." She hesitated, her gaze meeting Amelia's. "The treatment is still in the experimental stage, Mrs. Miller. There are risks involved, significant risks. You need to be fully aware of the potential consequences." Amelia, her mind racing, asked about the specifics of the treatment. Dr. Reed explained that it involved a combination of hormone therapy, designed to stimulate the ovaries to produce a large number of eggs, and a new technique for implanting multiple embryos directly into the uterine lining. The goal, Dr. Reed explained, is to maximize the chances of implantation, to give each embryo the best possible opportunity to develop. But it also means that there's a higher likelihood of a multiple pregnancy, a very high multiple pregnancy. Amelia, desperate for a child, was willing to consider any option, no matter how risky. But the thought of a very high multiple pregnancy, more than triplets or quadruplets, was daunting, almost unbelievable. How many is very high? Amelia asked, her voice trembling slightly. Dr. Reed paused, choosing her words carefully. "We've had one case," she said, "where a patient conceived 9 viable embryos. It was extraordinary and extremely challenging." 9. Amelia's mind reeled. It was almost impossible to imagine. But the seed of an idea, a flicker of hope, had been planted. The meeting with Dr. Reed introduces the crucial element of the fictional advanced fertility treatment. Dr. Reed is presented as a pioneering but controversial figure, adding a layer of ethical complexity to the narrative. The potential for an extremely high multiple pregnancy is introduced gradually, building suspense and allowing Amelia and the reader to process the implications. Amelia left Dr. Reed's office with a head full of information and a heart full of conflicting emotions. The prospect of finally becoming a mother, after years of disappointment, was exhilarating. But the potential risks of the experimental treatment, the possibility of an extremely high multiple pregnancy, were terrifying. She shared the information with David, her husband. He was initially stunned, speechless. He had always been more cautious than Amelia, more risk-averse. He was supportive of her desire for children, but he was also deeply concerned about her health and well-being. They spent hours discussing the pros and cons, weighing the potential benefits against the significant risks. They researched Dr. Reed and her clinic, reading articles, testimonials, and online forums. They talked to their families, seeking their advice and support. David's parents, traditional and conservative, were vehemently opposed to the idea. They believed it was unnatural, dangerous, and ethically questionable. They urged Amelia and David to reconsider, to explore adoption or to accept their childlessness. Amelia's mother, however, was more supportive. She had witnessed Amelia's pain and longing for years, and she understood her desperation. She encouraged Amelia to follow her heart, to make the decision that felt right for her. The ethical dilemma was not just about the medical risks, it was about the very nature of motherhood, the limits of science, and the responsibility of bringing multiple lives into the world. Was it right to intentionally create a situation where so many babies would be born prematurely, with all the potential health complications that entailed? Was it fair to the children to subject them to such a high-risk start to life? And what about Amelia? Could her body handle such a pregnancy? Could she cope with the physical and emotional demands of caring for so many infants? David, while deeply concerned about the risks, ultimately deferred to Amelia's decision. He knew that she had carried the burden of their infertility for years, that she had endured countless medical procedures and emotional setbacks. He couldn't deny her this chance, this last hope, to fulfill her dream of becoming a mother. But he made her promise him one thing, that she would listen to her doctors, that she would follow their advice, and that she would prioritize her own health and well-being above all else. The ethical dilemma section explores the complex moral and emotional considerations surrounding the decision to undergo the experimental treatment. It presents different perspectives, highlighting the concerns of family members and the internal conflict faced by Amelia and David. The focus is on responsible decision-making and the weighing of risks and benefits. After weeks of agonizing deliberation, countless conversations, and many sleepless nights, Amelia made her decision. She would proceed with Dr. Reed's experimental fertility treatment. It was not a decision she made lightly. She was fully aware of the risks, of the potential for complications, of the overwhelming challenges that lay ahead. But she was also driven by a deep, unwavering desire to become a mother, a desire that had consumed her for years. She had weighed the pros and cons, she had considered all the alternatives, and she had come to the conclusion that this was her best, and perhaps her last, chance to have a child. She knew that it was a gamble, a leap of faith. She knew that there were no guarantees, that the outcome was uncertain. But she was willing to take the risk, to face the challenges, to do whatever it took to fulfill her dream. She informed Dr. Reed of her decision, signing consent forms, undergoing preliminary tests, and preparing herself for the arduous journey ahead. David, while still apprehensive, stood by her side, offering his unwavering support. He had made his peace with her decision, recognizing that it was ultimately her choice, her body, her future. He promised to be there for her, every step of the way, to help her through the pregnancy, the birth, and the challenges of raising however many children they might be blessed with. He started researching multiple births, reading books, joining online support groups, and preparing himself for the possibility of a very large family. He began to transform their spare bedroom into a nursery, painting the walls a cheerful yellow, assembling cribs, and stocking up on diapers and baby supplies. He was scared, yes, but he was also excited. He had always wanted children, and he was determined to be the best father he could be, no matter how many babies arrived. Amelia's decision is presented as a carefully considered choice, driven by her deep desire for motherhood but also tempered by an awareness of the risks. David's support, despite his initial reservations, is crucial, highlighting the importance of a strong partnership in facing such a challenging situation. The preparations for a multiple pregnancy begin, setting the stage for the next phase of the story. The first few weeks of the treatment were intense. Amelia underwent daily hormone injections, her body flooded with powerful drugs designed to stimulate her ovaries to produce a large number of eggs. She experienced side effects of bloating, mood swings, fatigue, and nausea. She visited Dr. Reed's clinic every other day for monitoring, undergoing ultrasounds and blood tests to track her progress. The doctors were meticulous, carefully adjusting her medication dosages to maximize the chances of success while minimizing the risks of hyperstimulation. The egg retrieval procedure was a success, yielding a surprisingly large number of mature eggs. These eggs were then fertilized in the lab with David's sperm, creating dozens of embryos. The next step was the implantation. Dr. Reed, using a new, minimally invasive technique, carefully implanted multiple embryos directly into Amelia's uterine lining. She explained that not all of the embryos would implant, and that even those that did implant might not all survive. "We're aiming for a high success rate, Mrs. Miller," Dr. Reed said. "But we also need to be prepared for the possibility of a multiple pregnancy, a very high multiple pregnancy." Amelia nodded, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. She knew the risks, she had accepted them, but the reality of the situation was still daunting. 10 days after the implantation, Amelia took a home pregnancy test. It was positive. She was pregnant. She and David celebrated, their hearts filled with joy and gratitude. But their celebration was tempered by a sense of apprehension and knowledge that this was just the beginning of a long and uncertain journey. A week later, Amelia went to Dr. Reed's clinic for her first ultrasound. She lay on the examination table, her hands clasped tightly over her stomach, her eyes fixed on the monitor. Dr. Reed moved the transducer across Amelia's abdomen, her brow furrowed in concentration. The silence in the room was thick with anticipation. Then, Dr. Reed's eyes widened. She stared at the monitor, her expression a mixture of disbelief and awe. "Mrs. Miller," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't believe it." She called for another doctor to confirm her findings. They both stared at the monitor, their faces etched with astonishment. How many?" Amelia asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Reed took a deep breath. 10, she said. "There are 10 viable embryos. You're pregnant with decuplets, Mrs. Miller." 10. The word echoed in Amelia's mind, a number so large, so unbelievable, that it seemed to defy reality. She was pregnant with 10 babies. The shock and awe of the early pregnancy, culminating in the revelation of the decuplet pregnancy, is a dramatic turning point. The scene is carefully crafted to build suspense and to emphasize the extraordinary nature of the situation. The reactions of Amelia and the medical professionals are realistic, highlighting the unprecedented nature of the case. The news of Amelia's decuplet pregnancy, initially confined to the medical team and the immediate family, quickly spread. It started with whispers among the clinic staff, then leaked to a local newspaper reporter, and from there, it exploded onto the national and international stage. Amelia and David were inundated with calls from journalists, requests for interviews, and offers for book deals and reality shows. Their quiet, private life was suddenly thrust into the glare of the public spotlight. The media frenzy was overwhelming. Reporters camped outside their home, photographers stalked them at the grocery store, and their faces were splashed across the front pages of newspapers and magazines around the world. The story was framed as a medical miracle, a testament to the power of science and the resilience of the human spirit. But it was also a source of controversy, sparking heated debates about the ethics of reproductive technology and the limits of medical intervention. Some people hailed Amelia as a hero, a brave woman who had overcome infertility to achieve her dream of motherhood. Others condemned her as reckless and irresponsible, accusing her of playing God and endangering her own life and the lives of her unborn children. The public scrutiny was intense, relentless, and often cruel. Amelia and David found themselves the target of online trolls, hate mail, and even death threats. They were judged, criticized, and dissected by strangers who knew nothing about their lives, their struggles, or their motivations. David, fiercely protective of Amelia, wanted to shield her from the media onslaught. He hired a lawyer, issued a statement requesting privacy, and threatened legal action against anyone who harassed them. But Amelia, while overwhelmed by the attention, also felt a sense of responsibility to share her story, to educate the public about the realities of multiple pregnancies, and to advocate for responsible use of reproductive technology. She agreed to a limited number of interviews, carefully choosing journalists who she felt would treat her story with respect and sensitivity. She spoke candidly about her struggles with infertility, her decision to undergo the experimental treatment, and the challenges she faced as she navigated her unprecedented pregnancy. The news-spreading section highlights the impact of the media frenzy on Amelia and David's lives. It explores the ethical dilemmas of privacy versus public interest, and the challenges of navigating intense public scrutiny. Amelia's decision to selectively engage with the media shows her agency and her desire to control the narrative surrounding her experience. Amelia's pregnancy was a medical marathon, a constant battle against the odds. Her body was stretched to its absolute limits, carrying 10 developing fetuses. She was under constant medical supervision, monitored 24/7 by a team of specialists at a high-risk pregnancy center. She was confined to bed rest for the majority of her pregnancy, her movements restricted to prevent premature labor. She underwent daily ultrasounds, blood tests, and fetal monitoring. She was given a cocktail of medications to manage her blood pressure, prevent blood clots, and support the development of the baby's lungs. The physical toll was immense. She experienced severe nausea, vomiting, back pain, and swelling. She struggled to breathe, her lungs compressed by her expanding uterus. She was constantly exhausted, her body working overtime to sustain 11 lives. The emotional toll was equally challenging. She worried constantly about the health of her babies, about the risks of premature birth, about the possibility of losing one or more of them. She felt isolated, confined to her bed, separated from the outside world. David was her constant companion, her rock, her lifeline. He attended every doctor's appointment, held her hand during painful procedures, and slept on a cot beside her bed. He cooked her meals, read to her, and massaged her swollen feet. He was her advocate, her protector, her unwavering source of support. The medical team, led by Dr. Reed, was dedicated and compassionate. They treated Amelia with respect and dignity, explaining every procedure, answering her questions, and reassuring her that they were doing everything possible to ensure a positive outcome. But they were also realistic. They warned her about the risks, the potential complications, the likelihood of a very premature delivery. They prepared her for the possibility of loss, for the heartbreaking reality that not all of her babies might survive. Amelia, despite her fears, remained remarkably strong and resilient. She drew strength from her faith, from her love for David, and from the tiny flutters of movement she felt within her womb. She was determined to do everything in her power to bring her babies into the world safely. The medical marathon section highlights the physical and emotional challenges of a high-risk multiple pregnancy. It emphasizes the constant medical monitoring, the invasive procedures, and the emotional toll on Amelia. David's unwavering support and the dedication of the medical team are also crucial elements. As Amelia's pregnancy progressed, the media attention intensified. News outlets from around the world reported on her every milestone, tracking the growth of her babies, speculating about the delivery, and debating the ethical implications of her case. Documentary crews followed her, filming her doctor's appointments, her therapy sessions, and her quiet moments at home with David. Reality show producers offered her lucrative deals, promising to chronicle her journey and the lives of her children. Amelia and David were fiercely protective of their privacy. They turned down most of the media requests, refusing to turn their extraordinary situation into a public spectacle. They agreed to a few carefully selected interviews, hoping to educate the public about the realities of multiple pregnancies and to advocate for responsible use of reproductive technology. But the constant scrutiny was draining. They felt like they were living in a fishbowl, their every move observed and analyzed. They longed for normalcy, for privacy, for a chance to prepare for the arrival of their children without the constant pressure of the media spotlight. The ethical debates surrounding Amelia's case raged on. Bioethicists, medical professionals, and religious leaders weighed in, offering conflicting opinions about the morality of intentionally creating such a high-risk pregnancy. Some argued that it was a reckless and irresponsible act, endangering the lives of both the mother and the children. Others defended Amelia's right to make her own reproductive choices, arguing that she had been fully informed of the risks and had made a conscious decision to proceed. The public, too, was divided. Some people were fascinated by Amelia's story, offering messages of support and encouragement. Others were judgmental and critical, condemning her as selfish and irresponsible. Amelia tried to ignore the negativity, focusing on her own health and the well-being of her unborn children. But the constant scrutiny, the harsh judgments, and the ethical debates took their toll. She felt the weight of the world on her shoulders, the pressure to justify her choices, to prove that she was worthy of motherhood. The World Watches section explores the impact of the intense media scrutiny on Amelia and David. It highlights the ethical dilemmas surrounding privacy versus public interest, and the challenges of navigating public opinion in the face of extraordinary circumstances. The ongoing ethical debates add another layer of complexity to the narrative. As Amelia entered the third trimester of her pregnancy, the medical team began preparing for the delivery. It was a logistical and medical challenge unlike anything they had ever faced. They assembled a team of dozens of specialists, obstetricians, neonatologists, anesthesiologists, nurses, and respiratory therapists, each with a specific role to play in the delivery and the immediate care of the 10 premature infants. They converted an entire wing of the hospital into a specialized, high-risk maternity unit, equipped with state-of-the-art technology and staffed by a dedicated team of professionals. They prepared 10 individual and ICU stations, each equipped with incubators, ventilators, monitors, and all the necessary equipment to support the fragile lives of extremely premature babies. They ran simulations, practicing the delivery scenario, rehearsing the transfer of the babies to the ICU, and coordinating the complex choreography of medical personnel and equipment. Dr. Reed, leading the team, was meticulous in her planning. She knew that every second would count, that the slightest error could have devastating consequences. She was determined to give each of Amelia's babies the best possible chance of survival. Amelia, confined to her hospital bed, watched the preparations with a mixture of awe and trepidation. She was grateful for the dedication and expertise of the medical team, but she was also terrified of the impending delivery. She knew that the risks were enormous. Premature babies, especially those born in such large multiples, face a multitude of health challenges. They are at high risk for respiratory distress, brain bleeds, infections, and long-term developmental problems. She spent hours talking to the neonatologists, learning about the potential complications, the treatments, and the long-term prognosis for extremely premature infants. She tried to prepare herself mentally and emotionally for the possibility of loss, for the heartbreaking reality that not all of her babies might survive. David, by her side throughout it all, was her constant source of strength and support. He held her hand, reassured her, and reminded her of their shared dream, their unwavering desire to become parents. He also took on the practical responsibilities of preparing for their new life. He finished setting up the nursery, assembling cribs, stocking up on diapers and formula, and organizing the countless baby supplies that had been donated by well-wishers from around the world. He knew that their lives were about to change forever, that they were facing an unprecedented challenge. But he was determined to be the best father he could be, to provide for his children, and to support Amelia through whatever lay ahead. The preparing for the impossible section highlights the logistical and medical complexities of delivering and caring for 10 premature infants. It emphasizes the dedication and expertise of the medical team, while also acknowledging the enormous risks and the emotional toll on Amelia and David. The day of the delivery arrived sooner than expected. At just 28 weeks gestation, Amelia went into premature labor. The contractions started subtly, then quickly intensified, becoming stronger and more frequent. The medical team sprang into action. Amelia was rushed to the operating room, a whirlwind of activity surrounding her. Doctors and nurses shouted instructions, monitors beeped, and the air was thick with tension and anticipation. David, dressed in scrubs and a surgical mask, was allowed to be present in the operating room, holding Amelia's hand and offering words of encouragement. He felt helpless, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the medical intervention. Dr. Reed, her face calm and focused, performed a cesarean section, carefully and swiftly delivering the 10 tiny babies, one by one. Each baby was immediately handed to a waiting team of neonatologists and nurses, who rushed them to the adjacent NICU. The operating room was a scene of controlled chaos, a symphony of beeping monitors, hushed voices, and the rhythmic whoosh of the ventilators. The air was filled with the scent of antiseptic and the faint cries of the newborns. Amelia, exhausted but conscious, strained to hear the cries, to count the babies, to reassure herself that they were alive. She felt a surge of relief, of gratitude, of overwhelming love. The surgery was a success, but the journey was far from over. The 10 babies, ranging in weight from just over 1 pound to just under 3 pounds, were extremely premature, their tiny bodies fragile and vulnerable. They were immediately placed in incubators, their lungs supported by ventilators, their vital signs monitored constantly. They were fed through intravenous lines, their bodies covered in sensors and wires. Amelia, recovering from the surgery, was wheeled to the NICU to see her children. She gazed at the 10 tiny forms, each in their own incubator, a mixture of awe, love, and terror filling her heart. They were so small, so fragile, so vulnerable. She longed to hold them, to touch them, to feel their skin against hers. But she knew that they needed the constant care of the medical team, that their survival depended on the technology that surrounded them. The birth scene is a pivotal moment, described with a focus on the emotional impact rather than graphic medical details. The controlled chaos of the operating room, the fragility of the newborns, and Amelia's overwhelming emotions are central to this section. The days and weeks that followed were a blur of medical interventions, sleepless nights, and constant worry. The 10 babies, each with their own unique challenges, fought for survival in the NICU. They were given names, each carefully chosen by Amelia and David: Eva, Benjamin, Chloe, Daniel, Emily, Finn, Grace, Henry, Isabella, and Jack. Eva, the smallest, struggled with respiratory distress, her tiny lungs unable to function on their own. Benjamin had a brain bleed, requiring surgery and constant monitoring. Chloe developed an infection, requiring a course of powerful antibiotics. Daniel, Emily, and Finn were relatively stable, but they still required constant care and attention. Grace had a heart murmur, requiring close observation. Henry struggled to gain weight, requiring specialized feeding techniques. Isabella and Jack, the largest of the 10, were the strongest, but they still faced the challenges of prematurity, their immune systems weak, and their bodies vulnerable to infection. Amelia and David spent every possible moment in the NICU, watching over their children, talking to them, touching them through the portholes of the incubators. They learned to read the monitors, to understand the medical jargon, to advocate for their babies' needs. They became experts in the nuances of premature infant care, learning to change tiny diapers, to administer medications, and to recognize the subtle signs of distress. They celebrated every small victory, a successful feeding, a gain of a few ounces, a moment of spontaneous breathing. They mourned every setback, a new infection, a failed procedure, a moment of doubt. The NICU staff became their extended family, providing not only medical care but also emotional support. They answered their questions, offered reassurance, and shared in their joys and their sorrows. The 10 Tiny Miracles section focuses on the immediate aftermath of the birth and the challenges faced by the premature infants. It highlights the constant medical interventions, the emotional roller coaster for Amelia and David, and the dedication of the NICU staff. The individual names and challenges of each baby begin to establish them as individuals, not just a collective. Weeks turned into months. The babies, slowly but surely, began to grow and develop. They graduated from ventilators to CPAP machines, then to nasal cannulas, and finally, to breathing on their own. They learned to suck and swallow, transitioning from intravenous feedings to tube feedings, and eventually, to bottle or breastfeeding. They gained weight, their tiny bodies filling out, their faces becoming more defined. Amelia and David spent countless hours in the NICU, holding their babies, skin to skin, a practice known as kangaroo care, which is crucial for the development of premature infants. They talked to them, sang to them, and read to them, creating a bond of love and connection that transcended the sterile environment of the hospital. The NICU journey was a roller coaster of emotions, hope and fear, joy and sorrow, triumph and setback. There were days when they felt overwhelmed by the challenges, when they questioned their ability to cope. But there were also moments of profound joy, moments of connection, moments of pure, unadulterated love. They witnessed miracles, small and large. They saw babies who had been on the brink of death rally and thrive. They saw families reunited, bonds strengthened, and lives transformed. They also witnessed heartbreak. Not all of the babies in the NICU survived. They shared in the grief of other parents, offering comfort and support, knowing that their own journey could have easily taken a different turn. The NICU became their second home, the nurses and doctors their extended family. They learned to navigate the complex world of medical technology, to advocate for their children's needs, and to find strength in the face of adversity. As the babies grew stronger, they began to be discharged from the hospital, one by one. It was a bittersweet moment, a celebration of their progress but also a separation from the community that had supported them through their most vulnerable days. It takes a long time to take all the babies back home. The NICU Journey section provides a detailed and emotionally resonant account of the baby's progress and the challenges faced by Amelia and David. It highlights the importance of skin-to-skin contact, the emotional support of the medical staff, and the shared experiences of families in the NICU. The gradual discharge of the babies marks a transition to the next phase of their lives. Bringing 10 premature infants home from the hospital was a logistical and financial challenge of epic proportions. Amelia and David's modest home was transformed into a makeshift nursery, overflowing with cribs, changing tables, and mountains of baby supplies. They had to establish a strict schedule for feeding, bathing, and changing diapers, a routine that required military precision and unwavering dedication. They were constantly exhausted, sleep-deprived, and overwhelmed by the sheer volume of work involved in caring for 10 babies. Their families rallied around them, providing invaluable support. Amelia's mother, overcoming her initial reservations about the experimental treatment, moved in with them, helping with childcare, cooking meals, and providing emotional support. David's siblings and parents also pitched in, taking turns babysitting, running errands, and offering financial assistance. The community, touched by their story and impressed by their resilience, organized fundraisers, donated supplies, and offered words of encouragement. But even with all the help, the financial strain was immense. The medical bills from the pregnancy and the NICU stay were astronomical. The cost of formula, diapers, clothing, and other baby supplies was staggering. David took on extra shifts at work, sacrificing sleep and his own well-being to provide for his family. Amelia, still recovering from the surgery and the emotional toll of the pregnancy, struggled to find ways to contribute financially. They applied for government assistance, navigating the complex bureaucracy of social services, seeking help with food, housing, and childcare. They also received donations from charities and individuals who had been moved by their story. But the financial challenges were ongoing, a constant source of stress and anxiety. They worried about the future, about how they would afford to provide for their children's needs as they grew older. The family and finances section highlights the practical and economic realities of raising 10 babies. It emphasizes the overwhelming logistical challenges, the financial strain, and the importance of family and community support. The focus is on the everyday struggles of caring for so many infants, creating a sense of realism and empathy. As the babies grew stronger and began to be discharged from the hospital, the media attention, which had subsided somewhat during their ICU stay, reignited. News outlets from around the world clamored for updates, for photographs, for interviews with Amelia and David. The family was once again thrust into the spotlight, their lives scrutinized and dissected by the public. Offers for reality shows, book deals, and endorsement contracts poured in. Amelia and David were wary of exploiting their children, of turning their lives into a public spectacle. They had fiercely protected their privacy during the pregnancy, and they were determined to continue doing so, to the extent possible. But they also recognized that their story had the potential to raise awareness about infertility, multiple pregnancies, and the challenges faced by families of premature infants. They decided to selectively engage with the media, choosing outlets that they felt would treat their story with respect and sensitivity. They agreed to a few interviews, sharing their experiences, their struggles, and their triumphs. They emphasized the importance of family support, the dedication of the medical team, and the resilience of their children. They also used their platform to advocate for better resources and support for families of multiples, for increased research into premature birth, and for greater understanding of the ethical complexities of reproductive technology. They set strict boundaries, however, refusing to allow cameras into their home, protecting their children's privacy, and declining offers that they felt were exploitative or intrusive. The media circus section revisits the theme of public scrutiny and the ethical dilemmas of privacy versus public interest. Amelia and David's decision to selectively engage with the media, while setting clear boundaries, demonstrates their agency and their commitment to protecting their children. Their advocacy work adds another layer of purpose to their story. The first few years of raising 10 children were a blur of organized chaos. Amelia and David's lives revolved around feeding schedules, diaper changes, doctor's appointments, and endless piles of laundry. Their home was a symphony of sounds of crying, cooing, babbling, laughter, and the constant whir of baby monitors. Every surface was covered with baby gear, swings, bouncers, play mats, and a seemingly endless supply of toys. They developed a system, a routine that allowed them to manage the overwhelming demands of caring for so many infants. They divided the tasks, taking turns feeding, bathing, and soothing the babies. They relied heavily on the support of their families, who continued to provide invaluable assistance. As the children grew, their individual personalities began to emerge. Ava, the smallest, was a fighter, determined and independent. Benjamin, the quiet observer, was curious and thoughtful. Chloe, the social butterfly, was outgoing and affectionate. Daniel, the artist, expressed himself through drawing and painting. Emily, the performer, loved to sing and dance. Finn, the adventurer, was always exploring, always getting into mischief. Grace, the gentle soul, was kind and compassionate. Henry, the comedian, had a knack for making people laugh. Isabella, the leader, was confident and assertive. Jack, the charmer, had a smile that could melt anyone's heart. Raising 10 children was exhausting, demanding, and often overwhelming. But it was also filled with moments of profound joy, of unexpected laughter, of pure, unadulterated love. Amelia and David watched in awe as their children grew and developed, each with their own unique personalities, talents, and quirks. They celebrated every milestone, every first step, every first word, every first day of school. They learned to appreciate the small moments, the quiet cuddles, the shared smiles, the spontaneous expressions of love. They learned to find joy in the chaos, to embrace the messiness of life, and to cherish the extraordinary gift of their family. The growing up section provides glimpses into the challenges and joys of raising 10 children. It highlights the development of their individual personalities and the enduring love and support within the family. The focus is on the everyday realities of life with a supersized family, creating a sense of both wonder and realism. The experience of carrying, birthing, and raising 10 children transformed Amelia in profound ways. She had always been a strong and determined woman, but this journey had pushed her to her absolute limits, revealing a depth of resilience and a capacity for love that she never knew she possessed. She had faced unimaginable physical and emotional challenges. She had endured a high-risk pregnancy, a complex surgery, and the constant worry of caring for 10 premature infants. She had navigated the intense scrutiny of the media, the ethical debates surrounding her case, and the overwhelming demands of motherhood. She had emerged from it all stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. She had a newfound appreciation for the fragility of life, the power of the human spirit, and the importance of family and community. She also discovered a new sense of purpose. She became an advocate for families of multiples, sharing her story, offering support and guidance, and raising awareness about the unique challenges they faced. She became involved in organizations that supported premature infants and their families, volunteering her time, raising funds, and advocating for better medical care and resources. She also found a renewed appreciation for her own body, for its strength, its resilience, and its ability to create and sustain life. She learned to embrace her scars, both physical and emotional, as symbols of her journey, reminders of the battles she had fought and the victories she had won. She and David's relationship, tested by the stresses and strains of their extraordinary circumstances, had emerged stronger than ever. They had learned to communicate more openly, to rely on each other, and to appreciate the unique bond they shared. Amelia's transformation is a key theme of the story. It highlights the personal growth and empowerment that can emerge from overcoming adversity. Her advocacy work and her renewed appreciation for life add depth and meaning to her journey. As the decuplets grew older, their individual personalities became more distinct, more pronounced. They were no longer just the 10 babies. They were 10 unique individuals, each with their own dreams, talents, and challenges. Ava, the smallest at birth, remained petite but fierce. She was a natural leader, independent and determined, always striving to keep up with her older siblings. She excelled in gymnastics, her small frame giving her an advantage in agility and balance. Benjamin, the quiet observer, developed a passion for science. He spent hours reading books about space, conducting experiments in his makeshift laboratory in the basement, and dreaming of becoming an astronaut. Chloe, the social butterfly, thrived in the spotlight. She loved to sing, dance, and perform. She joined the school choir, participated in drama club, and dreamed of becoming a Broadway star. Daniel, the artist, expressed his creativity through drawing and painting. He filled sketchbooks with his imaginative creations, his artwork reflecting his unique perspective on the world. Emily, the performer, was a natural entertainer. She loved to make people laugh, to tell jokes, and to put on shows for her family and friends. Finn, the adventurer, was always exploring, always getting into mischief. He loved to climb trees, build forts, and explore the woods behind their house. Grace, the gentle soul, was kind, compassionate, and empathetic. She had a natural ability to connect with others, to offer comfort and support. She volunteered at an animal shelter, caring for abandoned and neglected animals. Henry, the comedian, had a quick wit and a playful sense of humor. He loved to make people laugh, to tell jokes, and to lighten the mood with his infectious giggle. Isabella, the leader, was confident, assertive, and organized. She excelled in school, taking on leadership roles in student government and various clubs. Jack, the charmer, had a winning smile and a magnetic personality. He made friends easily, and he had a natural ability to make people feel comfortable and at ease. Amelia and David, while overwhelmed at times by the sheer number of their children, were committed to nurturing their individual talents and supporting their unique dreams. They encouraged them to pursue their passions, to embrace their individuality, and to celebrate their differences. The focus on the children's individuality is crucial for counteracting the potential for them to be seen as a monolithic group. It highlights their unique personalities, talents, and dreams, emphasizing that they are individuals, not just a statistical anomaly. Years later, Amelia sat on her porch swing, watching her 10 children play in the backyard. They were teenagers now, a whirlwind of energy, hormones, and burgeoning independence. The chaos of their early years seemed like a distant memory, a blur of diapers, sleepless nights, and constant medical appointments. They had survived, they had thrived, and they had grown into remarkable young adults. She reflected on her extraordinary journey, the choices she had made, the challenges she had overcome, and the life she had built. She thought about the initial yearning for a family, the desperation that had led her to Dr. Reed's clinic, and the ethical dilemmas she had grappled with. She had no regrets. She loved her children fiercely and conditionally. They were her greatest joy, her greatest accomplishment, her reason for being. She also recognized the profound impact her experience had had on her life, shaping her identity, her values, and her perspective on the world. She had become a stronger, more resilient, more compassionate person. She had learned the importance of family, of community, of perseverance, and of hope. She had learned to appreciate the small moments, to find joy in the everyday chaos, and to embrace the unexpected twists and turns of life. She had also become a vocal advocate for responsible use of reproductive technology, sharing her story with medical professionals, policymakers, and the public, urging caution, informed consent, and a greater emphasis on the ethical implications of fertility treatments. She knew that her story was unique, extraordinary, but she also believed that it held lessons for everyone, lessons about the power of love, the resilience of the human spirit, and the importance of making informed choices. David, sitting beside her on the swing, put his arm around her, his touch a familiar comfort. They had weathered the storm together, their bond strengthened by the shared experience of raising their 10 children. They watched as their children laughed and played, their voices filling the air with the sounds of life, of joy, of hope. They were a family, a large, unconventional, extraordinary family, but a family nonetheless, bound together by love, resilience, and a shared journey that had defied all odds. The long-term reflections provide a sense of closure and perspective. Amelia's thoughts on her journey, her lack of regrets, and her advocacy work add depth and meaning to her experience. The image of the family together, enjoying a peaceful moment, reinforces the theme of resilience and the enduring power of love. The story of Amelia and her 10 children is more than just a medical marvel. It is a testament to the complexities of human desire, the ethical boundaries of scientific advancement, and the enduring strength of the family unit. It is a narrative woven with threads of hope and despair, joy and sorrow, challenge and triumph. It serves as a potent reminder that the pursuit of parenthood, while a deeply personal and often sacred journey, can lead to unforeseen consequences when the boundaries of nature are pushed to their limits. The story calls for a thoughtful and cautious approach to reproductive technologies, emphasizing the need for informed consent, comprehensive counseling, and a thorough understanding of the potential risks and long-term implications. Beyond the medical and ethical considerations, the story underscores the profound impact of societal pressures and expectations on individual choices. Amelia's yearning for a large family, fueled by societal norms and personal desires, ultimately led her to embrace an extraordinary and potentially perilous path. The narrative also sheds light on the often unseen struggles of families with multiple births, particularly those resulting from fertility treatments. The logistical, financial, and emotional burdens are immense, requiring unwavering dedication, resilience, and a strong support system. Yet, amidst the challenges and controversies, the story ultimately celebrates the power of love, the unwavering commitment of parents, and the enduring bonds that tie families together. It showcases the remarkable capacity of children to adapt, thrive, and bring joy to the world, even in the face of extraordinary circumstances. In the end, Amelia's story is a reminder that life often unfolds in unexpected ways, that the pursuit of our dreams can lead us down uncharted paths, and that the true measure of our humanity lies in how we navigate those paths, how we support one another, and how we embrace the beautiful, messy, and often unpredictable tapestry of life. It is a story of extraordinary circumstances that shows the reader the importance of making informed choices, understanding the great responsibility of parenthood,